Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. And thank you so much for joining us here on this fantastic Friday's edition of Talk Today. We'll get things started with political candidate for West Bay South, Mr. Raul Nicholson Co. So please join me for the next hour.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And in the studio, candidate for the electoral district of West Bay South, Mr. Raul Nicholson Co. joins us. Good afternoon. How are you today, sir?
Very good, Dwayne. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, man. It's a fun time of the year, and it's an exceptional time in our democracy to be able to freely and fairly go to the polls and have our, voters exercise their right. So, thank you very much for your time.
It is definitely an exciting time, Dwayne, but it's also a frightening time because there's a lot of issues that we have to contend with and issues that we see or we hear about, but when you actually see them in person, where people that you've known and that are actually not enjoying some of the benefits of the development of the island, and there are very many different reasons for these persons not having the success that others do, but when we can sit and talk about it for a long time, but I think I would like to talk about more solutions. What do we do to help the situation? How do we move forward? How do we get into a space where people are more comfortable with what's happening and from a development perspective? And also, how do we give Caymanians the opportunity to actually get the jobs that they're trained to do and also get housing as well and look at cost of living generally? But the other thing that's actually something that has come to light, not recently, but it's become more exacerbated by COVID, is the struggles that our older persons are having, right? And as a measure of a country's greatness is how they deal with the most vulnerable. So the kids, the older persons, the people that are disabled, we have to look after these people because that's a measure, in my view, in terms of how well a country is performing socially. And the older persons are struggling now because they're very expensive place to live when you retire. There are lots of cost, including healthcare, which actually then goes up as you get older, right? But the premiums are paid when you're younger, but as you get older, you need more medical care, but you don't have the ability to get medical care because the premiums are so high. So there are lots of things that we need to talk about, and I'd expect you, as you always do, is to ask very probing questions and to give our listeners an idea in terms of what I'm thinking and also what I think as a country we need to do.
Well, I appreciate you put that on the table because I think it's important, as you say, we have our feet to the fire at times and we're going to be in this canoe. Well, I prefer to say the catboat altogether.
Right.
So as we look at it from that landscape, the issues are there and the solutions, as you've said, you want to focus on. Share with us first. Yeah. Issue, solution. What are the top 5 most pressing issues? Start with, in your mind, number 1.
Well, I think, I in no order of a priority, but I think they're equally important. So clearly getting access to jobs and giving Caymanians opportunities is critical. And that's across the board, right? Especially now, given COVID and the amount of persons that have been displaced in the hospitality industry. I think we have a fantastic opportunity now to actually retrain these people. They're getting the government subsidy, which is fantastic for them, but I think we could also retool and retrain them. The hotels now are actually not fully occupied, I think the occupancy rate is maybe 10% if you did it in an aggregated weighted format across the 30 days. So you have people that are unemployed that are being paid a stipend, but are in the hospitality industry. So we should work with the hotels, have the hotels create a training program. So someone that may be a boat attendant or a mate on a boat may actually be the perfect server because he's actually interacted with people. He understands what good service is. So get that person in training to be a fantastic server. When the country opens back up again, there'll be less reliance on work permits. There will also be a trained Caymanian who will be able to demand a higher salary. And secondly, from an economic perspective, it's the right thing because that individual, most of the money that he or she earns, will actually reside in Cayman. So the multiplier effect goes up exponentially, as opposed to having a work permit, whereby the amount of money that resides in the economy will be lessened. And the fact is, there are some industries that you're going to need work permits. But I think where we have an opportunity now within the hospitality industry, we have to actually take advantage of that because it is a golden opportunity. I know that COVID has created unprecedented issues, but this may be one of the good things about it, where we can retrain, retool. Because if you think about it as well, the cruise ship industry isn't coming back as quickly as most people would hope, right? I think that's going to take some time, and a lot of the people that worked in the hospitality industry as well are water sports operators, right? Especially in West Bay, right? So we need to think of what can we do to allow those people to be gainfully employed, because as and I'm sure you have, as I walk around the community, and I've done, 2 weeks and weeks and weeks and months of this, right? Just walking around and understanding the issues. Every Caymanians are proud people, right? They prefer to earn a living than to be given a handout. Right. And I think that's what we need to try to do. We need to try to encourage that more and facilitate that more.
Well, as you shared, I mean, the idea of retraining, retooling, getting the Caymanians equipped to take over maybe more in the hospitality sector. The corresponding sort of question is that, has government become so dependent on work permit fees to help to balance its budget? If there was a noticeable reduction in that revenue stream, how would that impact the overall sort of economy?
Well, I think it's actually it won't affect the government revenues because it'd be a net impact in my view. Because the fact is, if you have someone who's reliant on government for subsidies in terms of NAU or some other form of assistance, by you get the revenue in one hand, but the cost of actually providing the services to somebody else who's in need, it may be a negative. So, but if you get that person gainfully employed, right, you actually don't have to provide as much subsidy. So I think it'll be a win-win for government from an overall net perspective. Okay.
And then to those who may hear your argument, say, okay, well, if you take the example, the boat attendant, so a deckhand, who no longer is on the water sports, but comes into as a server, came in from one sector to came into another sector. Do we not have to replace that deckhand now with somebody else?
But I think that this, because of COVID, right, that's potentially if all things were equal, if you didn't have COVID, yes, that would definitely be an issue where you have structural unemployment, people moving from one job to the other. But in this particular case, I think that the tourism industry is going to take a while to come back, right? And specifically the cruise ship industry, because of the inherent nature of the cruise ships, right? So I think those persons would actually be better from the economic perspective, and you may not have that impact where you have to replace another work permit holder. So I think it's something that should be, especially the hotels they've all said that they would prefer to hire locals, because I think the experience, even from a guest perspective, is better because you're actually interacting with a local person who understands the history, who understands the cultures, understands the heritage. It's a much better experience, and I think that most hoteliers will agree. They'll say absolutely, we'd prefer that. But I think they need to work collaboratively and say, okay, we now have this. It's not a problem, actually, it's an opportunity. How do we exploit that opportunity and allow people to actually gain the benefit from it?
Job creation, opportunities you shared.
Yeah.
Some of the other issues and possible solutions as you were sharing.
Right. Well, the other one was housing. I mean, it's a severe, even for affordable housing is a problem, but also housing for Caymanians who are employed, who are in the job market, who are actually professionals. It's becoming increasingly difficult for them to purchase homes and for them to be able to afford the home. So I think we have to look at how could we reduce the barriers to entry. So if someone is a new home builder, should we not say, you're not only do we get a break on the stamp duty fees, but you also, provided all the steps are followed, that you don't have to pay duties on anything that you're buying to build your home. And we have to be very careful that that's not exploited, but we have enough mechanisms in place to be able to deal with that. So we have to look at creative ways. We also have to look at creative ways as well in terms of working with the banks, right? Because there are people in some industries whereby they will only take their base salary. They won't take their gratuities as part of their salary. But banks are critical to this as well in terms of providing loans. Banks traditionally, obviously, they do a lot of risk assessment and they understand the risk involved with either mortgage or a loan. But we have to, this mindset of not owning property, we have to put that as the priority as opposed to owning a car or something else that reduces in value the moment you drive it off the lot. And that is something that we'll have to work with banks. In the US, obviously, they have these, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac who actually provide subsidized mortgages for people. That's a more sophisticated way of doing it. But the fact there are models available, and I think we just need to try to explore and look at, see which one actually could be adopted for the market size, the demand, and the level of credit that's required.
Okay. So when you're looking at the housing and making it accessible, affordable for Caymanians, banks may be an impediment, cost of construction, maybe government regulatory requirements and fees and the like. Yeah. But are there other things that potentially could be impeding the ability of Caymanians to home ownership? Demand from competing interests overseas coming into the shores and bidding up the prices of available land. Yeah,
and I think that is a real issue. But I think that what we also have to think about is density as well, right? So we have a limited amount of land. We also have to protect certain lands because the environment is critical as well. So look at certain properties and said, why not increase the density? Not allow for there to be greater density. So the cost of actually doing the economies of scale then chips in, so you can reduce the cost as well. A lot of times we have fantastic laws when it comes to building, and that's why we have such great buildings. But I think we have to look at other things as well. How do we create a system whereby if somebody's building on a 1 acre property and it's for affordable housing, why not increase the density?
So go vertical?
Vertical, exactly.
If I may then ask, because as you recognize, we have a limited land space. We can import a lot, but maybe, not much land can be imported, right?
Right.
How high would you think would be for residential on that plot of land there? We do 3 stories, 4 stories. What would you think would be something?
Well, I think we'd have to look at it depends on the neighborhood as well, right? So we have to think just like how the zones are now, right? So neighborhood commercial is 3 stories, commercial, and tourism is up to 10 stories now. So depending on the location, I think it needs to be adapted for that, and we have to think of the aesthetics as well and the heritage. So it's not a one solution fits all. But we can't not look at it because the cost of building will go up if we don't look at density. I mean, and in most cities, of course, we don't want to be a city like New York City, but that's the reason why they went vertical, right? It's because it was cheaper to build that way as opposed to spreading out horizontally.
Looking at the lumps and space. Yeah. And then I guess as we go to the break, presumably in the traditional subdivisions, as we know, you said increase the density. So maybe this lot, there's only one house lot, could easily be
two house lots, right? I mean, but it is worth looking at, Dwayne, and I think that because the other thing is we have to think about is that as land becomes more expensive, and we have to think of the 7 Mile Beach, West Bay area is very expensive property, right? For many reasons, because the beach is there and there's high demand. So as you know, demand drives up prices, right? But what we also will have with people going further east, right? So we have to think of how do we create so that people don't have to deal with traffic jams. You have to think about all of those things when we make this plan. It has to be complete urban planning. This isn't going to, we can't think of this as a quick fix. This is generational changes. But I think if we don't start now, the ability to fix the issue is not going to go away. It just become exacerbated, and in the next 4, 8 years, 12 years, we'll be still talking about it. But let's try something. Let's do something. Let's create a public transportation system. Let's create proper bike lanes. Let's ensure that every development, whether it's residential or commercial, that there are proper sidewalks to encourage people to walk more, to encourage people to take buses. What we have here is an oasis. Cayman is an amazing place that we have the ability to actually, because of the scale, to make changes quickly. And we can do it in a controlled environment. So let's start doing those things, because we have a lot of very smart people here.
That is true.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pause and take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion with candidate for West Bay South, Mr. Rahul Nicholson Co. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Water Authority Cayman wishes to advise its valued customers and the motoring public of traffic diversions in the Anthony Drive area on Sunday, 28th February from midnight to 4 a.m. to facilitate ongoing infrastructure upgrades in the area. Oak Mill Street will be closed, with traffic being diverted through July Street on to Anthony Drive. Motorists are advised to avoid driving in the area during the works. If motorists must use the road, they are encouraged to drive with caution and follow all traffic signs to ensure their and the authority staff's safety. Customers on Oak Mill Drive between Anthony Drive and Fairfax Way and customers on Mayfair Close will experience intermittent water service during the works. The Water Authority appreciates the patience and understanding of its customers and the public as it undertakes these works and apologizes for any inconvenience this may cause.
Calling all gamers.
Practice play is over.
Get ready for 2 days of
non-stop competition, fun, and excitement.
NetGeeks Media is proud to present
the return of the Caribbean's #1 esports event and gaming convention,
Gamers Bay 5. Now celebrating our 5th anniversary, Gamers Bay is going down March 27th and 28th at the John Gray Gymnasium.
If you think you have what it takes, you can compete for over $10,000 in cash and prizes. Compete head-to-head in titles such as Fortnite,
Super Smash Bros.,
Call of Duty Cold War,
and FIFA 20.
See and try the latest game consoles and virtual reality headsets. Lots of free play for PC gamers, console gamers, and VR of all ages.
Special guest influencers will be in attendance.
For more information and to register yourself or a team, visit gamersbaycayman.com.
Proudly sponsored by NetGeeks Media, Domino's, Pepsi, Enterprise Cayman, C3 Pure Fiber, Department of Tourism, Ministry of Education, Youth Services Unit, Kimpton Seafire, Radio Cayman, Simply Computers, and Suzuki.
Commencement at the University College of the Cayman Islands is being moved to spring in line with more traditional practices in other countries. The spring date will allow graduating students to be a part of the university's celebration of their accomplishments. UCCI's 2021 commencement ceremony will be on Saturday, April 24th, 7:30 p.m. at the Sir Vassal Johnson Hall. Application deadlines for graduating students to apply for graduation is on Friday, 12th March. For all the information on commencement and to access the graduation form, visit www.ucci.edu.ky/graduation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. In the studio today, we have candidate for West Bay South, Mr. Rahul Nicholson Co. Thanks again for your time and appreciate the opportunity. As we were just chatting prior to the break, some of the issues you talked about, job opportunities and focus on housing, other issues that you seem near and dear to you.
Well, the other thing, Dwayne, that actually is critical to all of these things and perhaps underpin this is education. And we have to not revamp the education, but I think we need to look at it very objectively and understand what isn't working and what is working. So if you, in a few schools or in a school that I visited, the kids needing meal assistance is like 40%, right? And that's just isn't right. I think we need to find a way in which that there's less reliance on kids having to get meals subsidized by private entities or NGOs. And also the literacy rate. We need to start looking at it objectively. And in private schools, what private schools do is they look at everything and they said, okay, how well is this teacher performing? How well is this teacher performing from a literacy, from a numeracy perspective, and understand whether there's something that needs to happen, whether the teacher is maybe training in the wrong school or she's not in the wrong grade or this is not her proficiency, and look at the ones that are doing well. So Lehman Scott in Cayman Brac is doing well, indexing much better than the other schools. So let's understand and dig deeper and analyze and get the analytics as to actually what's causing that school to be perform better, index better, and try to transform those best practices to the other schools, because education, as you and I know specifically, is critical to allowing us to get a better life. I grew up extremely humble, right? I had humble beginnings from Northwest Point for 40 years. I lived there for 20 years. I moved 22 years ago. But education was always critical. I came out of school. I got a scholarship from Cable Wireless, went to England, came back. I was working as an engineer technician, and I decided I need to retool myself. So I went to UCCI, and I started working on my economics associate's degree. I started my MBA overseas, and I just continued to educate myself. Subsequent to that, I've done an HR training course. Education is critical, and I think that we need to ensure that we inculcate that into all of our people, because the moment they're trained, it becomes increasingly difficult for an employer to tell them, oh, well, you don't have the education, or you don't have, well, the experience is one thing, but the education, and it becomes a much more difficult discussion for someone not to hire you. I mean, when I was the CEO of Singular and in 2004 in Digicel, it was a policy of mine that I never hired non-Caymanians for entry-level jobs. So it wasn't anyone working in a store had to be a Caymanian, right? Because there's no way you couldn't find a Caymanian that 17 years old that could actually sell a phone. I was able to do that. And I think, but educating our people, Dwayne, is critical. And I think speaking about the things that are not performing well is the first step in doing so. We have to be able to move the needle, because you can't just continue to have kids coming out of school that are not performing well. And I think one of the things that my personal view is that perhaps we have to reintegrate the schools, because that raised the level of education. It also raised the level of participation by families and parents. And when you and I were in school, we knew everyone. There were kids from all over the world, and it actually equipped us to be able to deal with people from different parts of the world, different nationalities, different culture, by actually allowing them to understand what Cayman is about, and we understood them as well. Because in the real world, you're not only interacting with your people, you're interacting with people from many different nationalities, many different cultures, and I think we perhaps have done ourselves a disservice to not allow our kids to do that. And I would like to see the reintegration of schools from a very young age, but I think even more critical to that is the introduction of a STEM program, as a science, technology, engineering, and math, because the way the world is moving, just like how the forefathers and the politicians and the leaders of Cayman in the 70s realized that we had an opportunity to leverage the banking industry changing, and we were able to really ride that wave. And in the 80s, late 80s, we were able to see that mutual funds and hedge funds and stuff like that were actually going to become something of the future, and we were able to do that. I think now we see a resurgence or an increase in demand for technology. Everything is technology driven. Even the hospitals are technology driven. The way this is, I'm on YouTube now. These things are not, this will continue, and everything that we do will become technology driven. And the jobs of the future aren't going to be lawyers and doctors and stuff. Doctors will exist, but there will be a totally different skill set that's required from doctors. Perhaps the doctors of the future will be the guys that actually learn to play video games at a very young age, because their dexterity is different. They're able to maneuver these joysticks in a way that the normal humans aren't able to. There was a study that was done recently by The Economist, I think, or Harvard Business School, in which it showed the top job was computer science and analytics in demand. The fifth or sixth job that's least in demand was like accountants and lawyers and bookkeepers, right? And the reason why that is because technology is will be able to take what's normally done by a human as an accountant, will be able to do that using artificial intelligence and allow the machines to be able to do that. But in order for those machines to function, they need humans, and they need humans to be able to program them. And I think if we can get our Caymanian people employed and I guess not accustomed to these things, but aware that these jobs exist, right? Because the other thing that we have to do, I know we've been speaking about this for a long time, but technical trade schools is critical. In my company, right, we there's always a demand for electricians, right? And these people make actually a very decent living, and we need to be able to encourage Caymanians to get into that, to get a livable wage, so that if you're trained as a wireman, as an electrician, as a master electrician, you know exactly what you're going to be paid, because that's what the market demands. and we have to be able to do that. So when you say people are getting a proper livable wage,
as Rahul, as you talk about education and cost, many people say, well, education is key, definitely, but how do we pay for it? I mean, and who bears the cost of education?
Well, I mean, the education is it might be a public good, right?
Yeah, likewise.
It's a public good. It's just like providing a police force, right? And if you from an academic perspective, that's what it is. But I also think, we know that we have, the economy is going well. I mean, relatively well prior to COVID, and it seemed to be doing very well post-COVID. I think we need to start planning for the future. So what we need to do is create a fund, a sustainable growth fund, for example. So a percentage of the surplus that we've created should be put in this fund that's actually managed privately, similar to a sovereign wealth fund, right? But it has to be a sustainability growth fund, because the sustainability growth fund actually fits to be able to deal with education in the future, infrastructure, the older people or older person's healthcare cost. Those are all the things. And I'm not the most, when you think of countries that have done sovereign wealth funds, because they have like some sort of natural reserves that they can actually put in the but we have a natural reserve as well. We have tourism, we have a fantastic financial industry, right? And what we can't do is, if we don't create another revenue stream through technology, but also be able to take what we have that we make as a surplus and move that into a fund, a sustainability fund, that we can grow that as our surplus increases. We can then have less reliance on but having fees being paid by the different industries, right? And that could defray that cost and subsidize that cost. So I think it's a cost that we have to bear as a society, because if we don't bear that cost now, you can be guaranteed the cost in the future will be much greater, right? And
so with education, I mean, many have championed over the years that perhaps government isn't the one to provide education. That there should be somewhat else. Anthony, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the charter schools is one thing, and I think that charter schools have been seen to work very well, okay, in even more difficult environments, right? Such as, inner cities in the U.S., right? And if they were able to transform some of these inner city schools into high-performing schools where the vast majority of kids graduating actually go to tertiary education and become productive citizens, there's absolutely no impediment for actually being able to do that in Cayman. And I think we need to look at best practice. And that's the other thing about Cayman. We've been able to take the best from other countries and actually make it even better, right? And that's what I think we are really good at. Because if you go back in history, Caymanians traveled all over the world, perhaps as a per capita, right? If you looked at all the larger countries, we may have had more people traveling the world than any other country. And I think that's what it allowed us to be able to work with people from different parts of the world and be collaborative. In my career, right, I was able to work with lots of people. Some people you got along professionally with, some people you didn't, some people you got along with them personally, but we were able to work collectively and collaboratively because you had a single goal, which was to either make the company better or do a particular thing much better. And I think that's why Cayman is amazing. I mean, one of the older gentlemen that I canvass constantly. So every day I'm walking around West Bay, and you go into these places and you meet the history, right? I tell them sometimes we have to record these people, the experiences that they have. And a particular gentleman who walks with me is 84 years old, and he actually literally walks around with me. But his experiences is so vast, right? And he's able to, he knows everyone, because I think he's learned that over time that relationships is key. And I think we have lost that because we've not maybe allowed a generation after us to be able to reintegrate and understand that that's critical as well. But the education thing, in my view, is that we have to create a fund that we don't have to continually put money in, because we're going to have to build more schools, right? We now have the ministers that increased the salaries of the teachers, which is a fantastic thing. I mean, teachers are backbone of any society, just like healthcare workers are, just like any other person providing a service altruistically, the police. But what we've done now, we've raised the barrier where we can maybe attract better teachers, teachers that are into STEM, that understand that, so we could maybe look at the recruitment of teachers as well to make sure that what we're recruiting actually fits our long-term plans for education.
pause quickly and take a short break. We come back. Excellent company of Rahul Nicholson Co. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Thanks, Wayne.
Why work with a Sariba agent? We can tell you that those letters represent a proven understanding of the real estate market in the Cayman Islands. But it also means so much more than that. Our trained Sariba agents are committed to ethics, integrity, and excellence of practice. It's all about confidence, knowing you are working with a qualified Sariba agent. As members of Sariba, your trust is our promise. To find a Sariba agent today or to search thousands of listens, visit Sariba.com. Sariba, the mark of excellence in real estate.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Cayman Medical Supplies, providing quality pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and consumer products to healthcare providers, retailers, and ultimately the patients at a reasonable rate in a friendly, caring, and timely manner. Cayman Medical Supplies is located at number 93 Smith Road, Windward Center. Telephone 949-6211.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio, Mr. Rahul Nicholson Co., candidate for West Bay South. And as we're going through some of the issues, Rahul, we do have a caller join us. All right. Let's go to the phones. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to your guest.
Afternoon, sir. How are you today?
I'm all right. Good afternoon. First, I wish you the best in this election. I think we need to see people who open mind and have good ideas, good attention to the people, and I think you deserve a chance. West Bayers need to give you a chance. I encourage everybody who know me in your area and support me to support you and give you a support, because I see the area you're representing, there is no changes happen past 8 years when your opponent, she was representing part of government, and there is no achievement in the ground. And I think we need to give a chance to new faces. And I think I wish you all the best. And I hope that one day I meet you and we have talk and good ideas. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you for your call, sir. Thank you very much for your call and encouragement.
All right. Like I said, it's exciting but challenging. Sometimes sort of. But as we go through, education, other issues that you would like to see us address or are important to you as well.
Right. Well, I also mentioned housing.
Right.
Housing is, that's a basic as a basic form of human existence as well, right? And through my walk around, there are people that are not living in a standard of housing that I think is acceptable. Not only from a society perspective, just personally. I see it, Dwayne, and it actually pains me, man. It pains me that sometimes I go home and I tell Kathy, that's really, it's depressing, right? But what's also very encouraging is that the people, when you meet them, they're the sweetest people.
Best spirit, huh?
Best spirit. And I tell them, I said, if I could bottle your spirit and put that into a tablet, you'd be the richest person ever, because there are people that have a lot more than you that are going through, that are not as happy as you are, but yet you are there and you're struggling, but you have a light, and they're always optimistic. They're the first ones to tell you, continue doing what you're doing, right? And I wanted to touch on something in housing, because I think affordable housing is critical. It's critical for many things, right? It's critical for society, because there are exceptions to the rule where kids can grow up in a certain environment and they'll become extremely productive. But then there are kids that need a different space. So if you don't give the kids the opportunity to have a home where they can be proud of, to have a home where they can actually feel that they can go home and remain safe. Homes will be the safest place for kids. But I've been in certain areas where the kids during summer, They don't have any AC. Not to say that, AC it is a luxury, and I understand that, but they don't have the basics. So they play the entire time outside, which is what we used to do when we were younger, which is not a problem, right? But our environment was slightly different, right? And I think nowadays we have to look at how do we create affordable housing. And one thing that I want to look at is to see the best practices when it comes lease to own. So a person that may not have the economic means to come up with the initial investment to start a home, why don't we create a fund to allow them to be able to rent the home? But they have to be certain guidelines. They have to be able to pay the rent, and it's rent own. But don't build a home build it as a community. Get sociologists involved, architects involved, get them so that they can sit and talk about what is good about Cayman, what is good about how do we create the Cayman environment into housing so that we create a community where people actually feel a part of a community and that they're able to function as a community and not having to be stymied by the structures that they live in. And so the lease to own is something that I would like to explore more, so that we're not going to give we give subsidized housing now, right? So persons in the AU actually are living in homes where the government is paying for their rent, right? So why don't we create that so that the money is actually not going out of government, it's actually being made to develop, but there have to also be a sense of ownership as well, because that's what I think is critical. When you have a sense of ownership, you actually then own something, you feel part of it, you want to be able to protect it, because it becomes generational as well. So owning property creates wealth for generations, right? And if you own a home and you can pass that on to someone, that continues to elevate the person. But if you rent the entire life, your kids are at a disadvantage. So we have to look at those types of things. And I'm not saying that these solutions is a panacea to fix every issue in Cayman, and that is going to happen in 4 years. But if we don't start it, right, there will never be a solution.
With respect to what you've discovered in your walks, so relative to housing, many of the ESO enumerators during the population census will probably see the same, other community members. What is it that you think that happens in our society that somehow we ignore or turn a blind eye, or we don't see this plight almost as glaringly as you've witnessed it recently? Is there something that you think may be at play why we don't see it?
Well, I think we see it, Dwayne. I think most people see it, but we tend to ignore it. And I think that in normal human nature is if it's a problem, sometimes if we ignore it, it may go away.
I wouldn't have ignored, but I didn't want to use that word, so we ignore it.
Right, we may ignore it, right? But I think the forum that you have here, right, this is the ideal forum for us to actually talk about it. Talk about how we're going to fix it. Because it's not like this is unique to Cayman. This is actually a systemic thing in other countries, and those countries have a much greater problem than we do. So if we're able to go and find out how can they do it, then we can do it here. Our neighbors actually have a rent-to-own service or program in place, right? And their demand is much higher than Cayman. So let's look at how we could transpose that or transform it or Caymanize it into allow people to have a sense of ownership. And I'm a huge believer in that. The other thing as well, and I know I touched on this before, was also housing that affects the elderly as well, right? Because those people actually, when they get older, they need special needs. We need to be able to deal with those people in a way that is humane, you know? Yeah.
If I may ask, as you speak to housing and recognizing the limited land that are available, I've had over the years people who said, they have a plot of land, they have a home, but in order to accommodate their aging, ailing parents, they want to make an addition, either separate and apart, and yet the regulatory framework, the planning requirements, for somehow they can't navigate it. It's not permissible, or something is an impediment.
It's onerous, right? It's extremely.
Well, you're being kind.
Yeah, I mean it's onerous, and what we do is what we have to think of is understand the plight, as the word you use, but the struggles that people are under, right? And some people, you almost like you beat them into submission, right? And what they're trying to do is the right thing. There are other countries like Bermuda with limited land space, and I've been to Bermuda a number of times, and I was like, why is that house so big? But because they limited land space and the cost of living was so high, they actually allowed to continue to build their homes to allow for multiple families or kids to live with their parents, right? But I think we can do that here. The planning laws are fantastic in Cayman. There's nothing wrong with those. I think we need to be more I guess, objective when we look at a particular situation and said, okay, Raul has this requirement. Why don't you allow, if he allows his mom to come, he could build this, or his aunt or whatever. Not be so rigid in our interpretation of it, and still have the regulatory framework to, stop people from doing stuff that's illegal. But if someone is doing something to allow, to facilitate the betterment of another person's lives, we could actually, not the rules, but we could make special provisions to allow that. We could say, look, if you're bringing an alien parent in, because what we don't want to do is, we don't have large retirement homes, right? And that's not a Cayman way of doing things, right? We don't, retirement homes is something that that I would want to see a Caymanian do, because that's not how we live. We live as a community, and so I think we have to look at those types of things. And I am not a planning expert, but I'm sure the director of planning, Haroon, would sit with someone and say, look, this would be the most practical way of actually doing this. But also, from a housing perspective, we also have to look at maybe innovative ways of actually creating housing, how to reduce the cost of actually housing. So let's look at containers. Let's look at, in other countries, how they build homes and how they build these prefabricated homes that are and what they have to us to pass, the standards of the Miami-Dade standards, right, that we use here, but it isn't an impossibility. But let's not be so insular in our view and not take the advantage of actually having other people come in and look at it and create ways. Because if we're going to build the traditional way, it might be impossible, or maybe if the price may be so prohibitive, but if we find more innovative technological ways to do it, we can.
I guess as we adopted IBC now, we're probably looking, but to your point. Yeah. So as we go into the break now, we'll come back, we'll conclude the discussion after news, but as we go into the break, listeners are listening. The issues are there. You're offering up some notable solutions. Any of these particular solutions seem easier to maybe implement, or?
But I think the one on housing, right? I think that one. I think the education system is one that we could look at, because I know that a lot of work has been done by the current ministry and the minister and the education council that she appointed. A lot of work has been done into that. So there's a lot of groundwork that has been done. I'm sure we could leverage what has been done and implement that. The other thing that we have to think about is tertiary education as well, right? But we have ICCI, we have UCCI. We should actually see how both of those institutions can work together and create, like ICCI, for example, is geared towards people that are in the job market, but looking to augment their skills or further their skills. So it's more like a night school. So why don't we look at, how could that be added a curriculum for trades, but have it on one campus, so that it isn't two campuses, it's one campus is central, and leverage the teaching population and the expertise from both. Because we all, as you've said, we are on the same catboat together, right? We certainly are in the same catboat together. And in this, in a particular situation, we are definitely in the same catboat, and we don't really need a captain. We need everybody rowing, as opposed to, and even not even a sail. We need to get everybody rowing together, right? Because this will help Cayman, will elevate the skill sets, right? There'll be less reliance on social services in the future, and I think that is the ultimate goal. But I also think, Dwayne, from an education perspective, a STEM program is something that is critical, and we need to start that literally from kindergarten up to tertiary education.
Well, like you have said STEM and then added the A for STEAM, but the catboat, together. So we got to bail the Kellic, make sure we cut the jib.
That's right.
Let's go to the news. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Please stay tuned.
Thanks, man.
Follow Radio Cayman on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio Cayman.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only two species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Red Sky at Night is tomorrow, and organizers are encouraging you to bring the family to this special matinee event. The anchor event of K-Fest is being split into two sections this year because of COVID restrictions, with a dayside function featuring many activities for kids. Patrons will be treated to live performances and musicians, dancers, actors, and storytellers, as well as displays of creative work by visual artists and artisans, all on the grounds of the Harkwell Cultural Center. Red Sky is tomorrow with the matinee from 2 to 6 p.m. and the primetime event from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. The U.S. has carried out an airstrike targeting Iran-backed militias in Syria in the first military action undertaken by the Biden administration. The Pentagon said the strike destroyed multiple facilities and was ordered in response to attacks against U.S. and coalition personnel in Iraq. Militia officials said one person had been killed, but a war monitor reported at least 22 fatalities. Syria condemned the attack as a bad sign from the new U.S. administration. And people who believe Britney Spears' father should not be overseeing her controversial conservatorship have it so wrong, and that's according to his lawyer. In an interview with ABC News, Vivian Thoreen called Jamie Spears a fiercely loving, dedicated and loyal father who had stopped her from being exploited. Jamie Spears was made his daughter's conservator in 2008 after concerns were raised about the star's mental health. A recent documentary, however, has led to renewed scrutiny of her legal arrangements. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And in the studio, candidate for West Bay South, Mr. Raul Nicholson & Co. Hey, listen, a few more minutes of your time. Everyone should appreciate your input and your contribution. As you sharing, sir, we'll just listen and learn.
I can't believe this all went by so quickly.
You imagine, man. Some people's honeymoon don't last as long.
I know, but there were, as I walk around West Bay, doing like I was saying, right, the people that you meet, they're so interesting, and I think that the memory bank is something that we have to re-energize, because they all have very unique stories, and it tells the fabric, the tapestry of how Cayman, the great culture and heritage that we have, right? And it is, another iconic person, Miss Reba Dilbert, actually invited me to the CNCF event last week, and that was like fantastic. And Mr. Kim, who I visited, and he gave me it's unbelievable, right? This man is a brilliant engineer. You go to his house, he's actually completely off the grid. Before off the grid was popular, he's actually created an off the grid. He's unbelievable, right? But those are two examples of people that we have to, not only acknowledge, but keep them in high regard, because those are examples of persons that if we model ourselves after them, their hard work, their tenacity, their ability to adapt, we'll be the greatest country, better than we are now, right? And there are lots of other things that I believe in, like as you walk around, you think about sustainability and the environment, right? Something that is critical, especially having young kids. They educate you on the environment. My son is 22, Danielle, and my daughter is 18. They speak about the environment, and they're very passionate about it, right? But as I was walking through West Bay South, I noticed something that actually was troubling. There was garbage thrown all over the place, right? There weren't proper garbage bin holders. And I just thought, I'm going to solve this issue. Forget about me being elected in government. I'm doing this now. So we've actually partnered with a number of people. So Joel from Domino's, Woody Foster from Foster's. They're providing us with pallets, and we're repurposing the pallets as we speak to be garbage bin holders. So every road in West Bay South, in fact, the entire West Bay, right? We're going to start in some roads in West Bay. So the first one was finished, and the prototype will be installed on Bushes Street in West Bay. But they will be painted, they'll be given to the neighborhood, and they will take care of those. But it's a repurposing. So to me, that's sustainability. Taking a pallet that was, obviously there was cost involved, but it wouldn't be reused, it'll be shipped back or maybe discarded, maybe burnt. We're actually repurposing, painting it, giving it to the society. So actually create. So we want West Bay to be known as, the place where the best garbage bin holders. Those are things, but the thing is, it's amazing, right? Those things create a difference, because it actually, there's environmental issues, but there's also health issues as well. They attract rodents, so there's lots of benefits for it. But it also gives a sense of ownership as well, and pride in your community, right? That we need to think about. The other thing that I wanted to do for West Bay South as well is to think about how, when I'm elected, how do we actually create a better way to work with the community, How do we get persons? I know the district council exists now, but why not create area persons who are responsible for a particular street, for a particular block? So if they're having issues, they know you contact this person. If that person isn't able to help, then go to this person. Because a lot of stuff that they want aren't massive things, They're like, they just need to know to speak to the right person. And the other thing that I want to see, West Bay is so beautiful. I mean, the Miramale Road, you know that road? That is it's the prettiest part. It's the last part of the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be preserved. That has to be preserved and any remaining property along there, government needs to look to acquire, because the thing is, it shouldn't be, we can build amazing restaurants there, and we should, because it's such a beautiful place, but it should become a promenade. It should be something that I'd walk by that all the time, and I'm amazed as to how many people are sitting on that, on the seawall, but we could make it into something much better.
Mm-hmm.
There are also streets that you go into, Hennings Lane, for example. There's Genevieve Borden Lane. You go into there are homes in there that are just fantastic old Caymanian homes that they're very close to the main road, but the quality of life there, it changes. Honestly, it feels like you're in a totally different place, and those are the things that we have to preserve. So when I talk about like conservation and environmental stuff, I talk about not only the trees, but you think about the entire heritage.
The built heritage, yeah.
Exactly,
yeah.
The built heritage, because you go around there, and there's an example of this in the Caribbean. Actually, is in Curacao. An investor bought a large area of the town,
mm-hmm.
of this capital, and instead of actually cutting or raising the buildings and building a new building, he actually converted the area into a hotel. So the homes that were people used as homes in the past became hotel rooms. But I looked at some of these roads in West Bay, and I was like, man, those things could actually, you think about a hotel, instead of actually building a structure, you actually use the homes as hotels, you use the homes as restaurants and stuff like that, right. Because it is a fantastic option. And these are the West Bay South in particular, right? Because of its proximity to the beach, its proximity to 7 Mile Beach is just a fantastic way to do it. So I will actually want to... The garbage bin repurposing project is actually the reason why it's actually there and near and dear to me is actually community driven as well. So the people that are actually doing the work are people within the streets. It's not like you have somebody hired to do. You actually go to them, they paint them, so they feel a sense of pride and ownership. And it's going to be, I will guarantee you that every street will be. I'm aiming to have every street covered where there's a need with those bins, because it was, to me, it was an eyesore, right? And it was also a disheartening thing for people in the streets. Well, there's garbage there, and it's just a horrible feeling. I wouldn't want to live in that environment, and I'm sure they don't. They're human beings, right?
Yeah. Pride. Well, we do have a caller.
Yeah, sure.
Let's take this one. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello. Good afternoon. All right, we're speaking to a candidate for West Bay South, Raul Nicholson Co. Another 5 minutes or so of your time. And, those initiatives, something that I saw way back when and asked if it was possible. You drive through communities across the globe, you'll see painted on the intersection, nice visible signs that, allow, I guess, a greater awareness of safety issues, but also the local artisans in the area to do something.
Right.
And it's not just like chalk art on the ground. Presumably that's something we could pursue, beautify little areas, help the slow traffic, but being in communities, it's not just a road anymore.
Exactly, it's a word, and that's I think that we have amazing artists here that would more than likely. You and I have very close friends with an artist. I'm sure he'd.
You think he could do it?
I'm sure he would. It may take some time, but I'm sure he would do it. But he's that passionate about it. He's, his view on heritage is very strong, right? And he understands what the importance of heritage is, because heritage is what defines him and defines all of us, right? And I think that, we have to continue to promote those types of things.
Well, Raul, we do have a listener send us some comments on the WhatsApp. I'll just read as it was said. If I were in his constituency, as of now, he would have my vote. Or what are your intentions regarding homeless people and the mentally ill?
Well, actually, mental health issue is something that I take, it's very dear to me, as you may know, Dwayne, that during COVID, actually, I'll just give you an example of the types of initiatives that I have actually done, not for the mental health initiatives during COVID, and I realized that people were working inordinate amount of hours. You know, you get up at 7, you don't go to sleep. I know personally I wasn't going to sleep till very late. You're on the phones constantly because you just didn't have that human interaction. But I realized that the mental health effects would spike and people would actually need more help. So I got a call from the mental health support unit from government to set up a mental health line. And I was at the time was the CEO of Digicel. Within 38 hours, we actually set it up. They were able to provide mental health support, people needing mental health support or therapy online using our phones. And we gave out, I think it was 12 phones, so they were able to do that. I think that the mental health law is something that we have to look at to try to help people, because the incidence of mental health, and mental health is not it's just like any other illness. You know, it's not something that we should stigmatize. It's something that we have to understand. We have to fix it, right? And not fix it, but work with it and see that the world will be a much better place if we as a society understand the intricacies of it, right? I mean, I know the mental health, they're building it into the facility in East End. That will actually be fantastic. I mean, I think that now we can bring the people back that are in Jamaica that have been there for a long time back home. But mental health is something, and we also have to look at from an insurance perspective as well, to make sure that it isn't seen as a negative thing, that it's understood as an illness, and that it needs to be dealt with in the same way that we deal with any other illness, because people that deal with their mental health just become more productive. It's better for society. And so we have to look at it in that way. And it's something that I take very personal, that I'm involved. In fact, I went to a number of, there was meetings in West, but I also went to one this weekend as well. That was past weekend in at the Ritz-Carlton, the Alex Panton Foundation. That's a fantastic foundation that Alex's parents, Wayne and his wife, created. That has created a greater awareness of it, right? So people no longer feel stigmatized. It was a fantastic event, very professional, very insightful. But this is in this 4th year. But there was extremely well attended, and that's something that, you know, speaks volume in terms of, as a society, that we have no acknowledging that, because in the past I think we were like not wanting to speak about it. And I think this goes back to what you said before. We may have tried to ignore it, right? But it still existed. But now we have people that are brave enough and that have the understanding that this is something that you need to be ashamed of. You need to embrace it and fix the issue. So kudos to, you know, Wayne and his wife who have taken on the mantle, but there are others as well who have actually done it. And Jack and Neil in West Bay as well. She's doing a fantastic job in terms of creating a safe place for people or families that are experiencing issues in West Bay. I think is Mount Pleasant. She's doing it. She's like a giant. You know, she's unbelievable. Her
loud, silent voices.
Yeah, you've seen her. Yeah, loud, silent voices. She's unbelievable.
Amazing,
unbelievable. Her view on this and the tenacity and like this positive spirit, right, is something that we have to acknowledge. That comes from within, right? And the people that are like that, we have to just like embrace them and make sure that we support them, because it will make our society better.
All right. Well, Rahul, thanks for your time. Thanks.
It's been a pleasure. Actually, I'm obviously going to do this more often with you, and so, you know, I thank you for this, and I listen, audience. Hopefully, you guys, I'm free to take calls at any time, so don't be shy. Or WhatsApp messages, you can send them to me or you can send them to Dwayne. It doesn't matter. But thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend.
And to you as well. Right. To our listeners, you know, well, when you come back from the break, we got more to share with you. Please stay tuned.
How can you take your business from good to great and thrive in the new normal? By finding the smartest, most powerful IT solutions to optimize your business operations. And now, Digicel Business Hub is making it simple for you. High-speed Wi-Fi, mobile and office phones, IT security, Microsoft Office with Teams, and much more. Everything your business needs to level up in the new normal. Get world-class IT for your business with Digicel Business Hub. Sign up today. Call us on 623-3444 or visit our website, digicelbusiness.com.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
That thing we've been saying for 64 years? Ignore it. Eat the KFC wings, drink the KFC gravy, fill up on fries. Just please forget the thing we normally suggest. You know, that thing you used to do with your tongue after finishing a delicious piece of our KFC chicken. We get it. It's not easy. There's a reason why it's been our slogan for over half a century. But the world's drastically changed of late, and as soon as we can embrace the change, the sooner we can all get back to doing what we do best. KFC. It's good.
Getting vaccinated is an important part of keeping our islands protected against COVID-19. All persons who are scheduled to be vaccinated must present a photo ID which shows you are legally and ordinarily resident in the Cayman Islands or have permission to stay for 6 months or more. Accepted IDs include a Cayman Islands driver's license, passport or voter's card, a global citizen's certificate, a work permit grant letter, extension letter or job letter from a local company, or a non-Caymanian passport which shows the holder has been landed with permission to be on island for 6 months or more. Essential workers must also present their work ID to show proof of employer. Anyone who has already received a first dose may still receive the second and must show their vaccination card. For more information on the vaccine program, visit www.hsa.ky.
Now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Everywhere.
Can you hear me now? Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yes, right from your Android or iPhone. Download the Radio Cayman app now on your Android or iOS phone.
The Radio Cayman app
is where you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go, we go. Everywhere we go, we go.
Find it in the Google Store, the Apple Store, or use the link at www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Yes, now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And in the studio now, we have an opportunity to focus, on our Caymanian society, our history, heritage. Honored to have in the studio the excellent company of Mr. Henry Batu. We also have the good company of Dr. Livingston Smith from UCCI, and of course his colleague. What do you think of Dr. Smith? What do you think about young Christopher Williams? Do you think we can bring him in?
Yes. He's a superb intellect. Yes. In fact, I have in my hand Dr. Christopher's book entitled Defining the Caymanian Identity, which he did while he was a PhD student at Warwick.
Yeah. The one he keeps promising to autograph for him.
You will get a copy today, I promise you.
I need to give him a hard time. I haven't seen him in the bookstore much, but this is part of the banter and the jest that we have relative to being able to celebrate who we are in the country. And Mr. Batu, I think the respect that we would have for the work of CNCF, the educational acumen that comes out of UCCI, and people not just as community activists, politicians, parliamentarians, educators, but the spirit that they have in the form of J.A. Roy Borden gives us a chance to appreciate that we are growing an emerging society, much to conquer, but still much to contribute.
Yep. For sure.
Sure.
Well, I mean, the foundation's work is there. I don't want to go over it too much, but I think history can determine the kind of work that we've done and the sort of areas we have touched, beginning in the 89 right through to now. And very early, I'm trying to remember the exact year, we've been involved with Roy since from the time he was a minister. I mean, obviously he was our Minister of Culture at the time, so we got to know him very well then. But then one day, I remember he sent me this book of stories, short stories, and he said, I want you to tell me what you think about this. And I said, I love it. Can we publish it? We want to publish it. So we ended up publishing stories my grandfather never told me. And so that was the first book, I believe, if I might be wrong, but I think it's the first book that he published. And then we did a I think there was a second edition that came out, which he, did on his own, but just using the text and so on. So we go back that long on several fronts. And then, he and I talked a lot about all kinds of things, culture, politics, the arts and so on, outside of when he left politics. When he was no longer in politics. And I have a lot of respect for him. And as you see, we call him here a public intellectual. I have a lot of respect for him. I think the work that he has done at the University College of the Cayman Islands, it's people use words a lot, but incredible. I think he's done a terrific job with, the university, getting it from where it was with that big scandal that they had, and then bringing it up to the point when he left. That's incredible work. But one of the things that we have always wanted to do at the Cultural Foundation is to celebrate many of our public or whatever, private intellectuals, if you want to call them that. Prior to, as a matter of fact, before Roy, we published Dr. Mark Field. And he is somebody at some point in the future, hopefully in another year or so, we will want to do something on his work, because even though his work is not as he hasn't covered as many publications, the work is I think very, very good, and socially it needs to be looked at, the plays that he's written, because when we go back in these plays and we look at them, we'll see a lot of things that we could have avoided at now. So I think that has to be looked at. But for the moment, we're putting together this symposium, and I really am very, very happy that we could have Dr. Smith, who is one of the key people who we will lean on a whole lot for his scholarship and his intellect and his experience, and here
Dr. Christopher Williams.
Dr. Williams. And I just want to thank them, first of all, for coming on the committee to help us, because all of us are busy, and I'm sort of in and out running because we have Red Sky tomorrow. But I just want to say that this is a symposium on Roy Budden as a public intellectual, and what I think we're asking people to do, to submit papers, which it's really an interrogation of Roy's work as it relates to the social and political development of the Cayman Islands. I think, to me, that's where his work stands, how we've developed over the years, and I know he's writing. There's a new book coming out soon. Very shortly. He sent us a sort of a synopsis,
that's right. Yes,
a bit of blurb on it, and he also has a new book of poetry coming out, which I am looking at next week. So I mean, I'm just excited for these things, because I think that this time in the Cayman Islands, forget COVID and all that, but just at this particular time, it's really it's important that we begin, seriously looking at our intellectuals, because we have to, a long time ago I said we need to create a class of scholarship, and I don't mean class as separating anybody, but we have to create a kind of scholarship where there are people who are willing to probe these kinds of things, so that we can have a track along which new politicians who are coming into the game now and who have been there for a little while would be willing to look back and to read the kind of stuff that our public intellectuals are putting out, and our scholars are putting out, to be able to guide them as we chart the future of the Cayman Islands. So, I'll pass it over to you guys now. But I don't know if I haven't said anything, but the Cayman National Cultural Foundation will be doing it. The dates we have...
June 11th. June 11th.
June the 11th is the actual date. And let me just say this, and I'm sure...
24? Okay.
What I think the panel would be interested in, and what people who know, we are trying to get, we're halfway there to getting Dr. from King's College, Dr. Drayton. We're trying to get Dr. Drayton. He is the professor of imperial history at King's College. A brilliant guy. Caribbean born and raised, Guyana, Barbados, and then London. And his father Dr. Harold Drayton is one of the giants of the Caribbean, and his mother also, who was involved in education at the University of Guyana and at the University of the West Indies in Barbados when they moved from Guyana to Barbados. I think they moved in the late 70s or 80s, a little after I left to go to London. But I'm happy to say that he is. I spoke with him, he said he'd love to come, subject obviously to, whatever COVID restrictions. To get him here may be a little bit more expensive, of course, because we'll have to put him up for a couple of weeks, depending on if it's still 2 weeks. But I think he's happy to do that. He's excited by it. And although he doesn't know Roy's work as well as some of us do, he's happy to read them. And I told him, if he can't get anything online, I'd be happy to FedEx them up to him so he can read them long in advance. But if you've seen him, you can see him on YouTube if you want to see the kind of things that he's involved in. But I'm sure Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith knows of him. And so we'll be happy to have them. And we have some other members of the team, Dr. Smith.
Yes, in fact, thanks. In fact, we call ourselves, working with Henry, we call ourselves the Committee for the Promotion of Research and Cayman Scholarship. All right? And we have persons like Theresa Pitcairn, Steve McField, Mikaela Scott, Dr. Tom Phillips, Henry, Billy Adam, people like those from the community who believe that we can find opportunities to celebrate persons who are writing about Cayman and bringing scholarship to bear on issues here.
Well, Mr. Matu, as you referenced, I know we'll have you back in not only specifically for the symposium, but for the things. I know that you have Red Sky on tomorrow night, so maybe I'll see you across.
And you know how it is. You know how it is when you're trying to do several things. We have the venue has to be prepared, and a little rain fell yesterday and today, so we had a couple of hours where we lost, but everything is going to be ready. It's going to be beautiful. I don't know, but so tomorrow is Red Sky, and I don't want to promote that here, but just to let people know, tomorrow is Red Sky.
Sailors Delight.
2 o'clock, right now. So come over to the Halfway.
All right. Well,
so I want to thank the gentlemen again, and even the members of the panel who are not here, and hoping that we get enough support, both from our public and from the potential scholars from abroad who may want to write papers and submit them for us. But I just want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about it.
Well, with that in mind, we'll pause quickly when we come back. Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith will remain with us. We'll get a chance to talk more about the symposium, the call for papers and the like, and we invite you to participate. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Hi, I'm remodeling our bathroom. I have a few questions.
Sure.
What are some ideas to make my bathroom feel larger? How do I know if I'm picking the right vanity? How do I choose a new toilet or a new countertop? Also, the lighting is terrible. Can I put a window or a skylight? And do I really need an exhaust fan?
You've come to the right place. At Brand Source, we custom design kitchen and baths, and our talented design team can help answer your questions. Whether you're looking for a modern, functional family bathroom or a luxurious personal retreat, we'll help create that beautiful space that makes your home yours. And if you're in a rush for a new look and have a limited budget, our ready-to-install bathroom vanities, built with solid wood and countertops of the finest materials, are a quick and easy remodeling solution.
For the very best in custom-designed kitchens and baths, visit Brand Source Home Gallery on Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park, Cayman's Kitchen and Bath Center.
For the Record, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings from 7:30 to 9:30, we interview the various government ministers, opposition, and Cayman Island legislators. For the Record is brought to you by Professional Pharmacy at Chrisley Tomlinson Memorial Hospital. Our pharmacists are here to assist you and recognize the need to personalize your care. Professional Pharmacy, fast, efficient, professional service. Visit us today.
System 1 loaded.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Radio Cayman News.
More details tonight after a jet ski collision this morning at Cowood Beach.
It's been almost 2 years since the national airline voluntarily grounded the fleet.
This ongoing matter has identified a gap within the Customs and Border Control Act.
It is more important than ever that we encourage healthcare projects that close healthcare gaps.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for your company and time, and equally thanks to our guests for sharing with us. And as we have, Professor for the Department of Social Sciences, I think, Dr. Smith, and one of the times you've been in the studio, if I ever got your title correctly, probably only once, but I was elevating you always, And thanks for bringing along your colleague, Dr. Christopher Williams. We got a chance to chat. But as Mr. Henry was sharing with us, even using the word intellectual sometimes, or intellectuals, in the Cayman context, referencing the society, for some, it's almost offensive. For others, it makes them feel a bit. But Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, different places in the Caribbean, it is a different sort of mantra and mindset. Dr. Smith, your thoughts on that?
That's a very, very good question there. If we were to use Mr. Bodden as an example of a public intellectual, then you could see somebody who's very down to earth, who's very in tune with what is going on. In fact, he does quite a bit of farming, things like that. But at the same time, he has what I would call a very a kind of discomfort with the way things are, and that is always necessary for the intellectual to have a kind of a critical dissenter. But his objective is not to make small of something, but it's always to make better. All right. So in my mind, the intellectual is a thinker. Most times they operate from academia. They spend time thinking through ideas, and they entertain ideas, they explore ideas, and they communicate ideas. And in the case of Mr. Bodden, he has spent, and I want to just go through his works shortly with you and the listeners, Dwayne, before I talk about the symposium some more, chronicling and the experience of the Cayman Islands. And he consistently holds up kind of a mirror for society to reflect on itself, all right? And I think the public intellectual needs to have a sense of history. That's a critical part of what has to be there, because that person uses history to enrich. So the person is enriched by the past, not that it's tied to the past, you see? And I would say, too, that the public intellectual sees herself as a kind of you're called to do this out of personal desire, but also as a desire to enable society to reflect on itself. There's something, Dwayne, called self-knowledge is crucial. Society needs to know itself. And so I would say, in essence, that the public intellectual is someone who's engaged in a quest to understand, a constant quest to understand. And so he might have ideas around a particular thing at this time, but the next 5 years that might have evolved. You see?
So in a society, if there's an inability or an unwillingness to record in some form or fashion, usually through maybe a writing of a sort, what is transpiring or what may have been missed or what may be imagined, then how can a society critique itself? How can a society grow? And maybe if that's not written from within, it certainly will be commented from without. The perception is messed.
And then it becomes his story. Chris,
yeah, just to kind of jump on Dr. Smith's points. The effective public intellectual ought to be a prophet, a sort of unrelenting soothsayer of sorts. So what do I mean by that exactly, right? The effective public intellectual should be equipped with the skills and the talent necessary to identify and, if you will, contextualize future consequences based on current trends. That's what it's all about, right? So if you think about it, any public intellectual worth her weight in relevancy, right, ought to be aware of the underlying interactive dynamics of various social issues and be honest and sincere enough in her interpretation of such issues.
If we would probably even step it aside a second, back in the day, we talked to people in the Cayman context, good people with vision, and they would do things, and we would look at them as making provision for certain things, even on a micro level. Now we want to expand this so that whatever's recorded allows future generations to be able to reflect on it and comment, but for the current generation to be able to critique in a way that it may be implementable. It may just be a very constructive dialogue. For that though, if we think of Cayman and its history and its recorded history, it's obviously written from another perspective in a different voice by different people who, with the greatest of deference, the discussion this morning with Mr. O.C. Wasn't just enlightening. It should have been evocative for many of us.
Right.
The renaming of Discovery Day, the pulling down of statues across the globe, the appreciation for the policing across. I mean, we've never have urban commandos dressed in military and riot gear roaming our streets. How long before that is in Cayman? Right? So little things like that are not so long. Little, right, Dr. Williams?
Yeah.
He shakes in agreement. I don't feel I'm on my own.
Yeah. And you're so right, Dwayne, because I keep insisting that when we're talking about developing a society, it's not confined to the building of edifices, all right, or businesses and so on. The role of the writer is important. The thinker, the historian is also vital. And our interest in Mr. Bodden,
and as we
of course, is because of how many books he has written. You know, I'm checking them out. We're talking about at least 6 books so far that he has written, and I'll just mention some of them very quickly
yes,
for
please.
you.
Just remind us. Yes.
His first book was actually The Cayman Islands in Transition, The Politics, History and Sociology of a Changing Society. It was published in 2007. And Bodden states why he was writing that book, but I think those reasons reflect, his reason for the other books too. He says he wants to search for understanding and probity in Caymanian history and politics. He wants to understand, he wants to respond to, he wants to interpret attempts at self-determination. He wants to understand how Caymanians and expatriates have grappled with and continue to grapple with issues of settlement and history and coexistence and modernity and globalization and things like that. Sometimes people don't understand the act of writing. Chris has done a few books himself. It takes quite a bit of work to sit down, to sift through information and to construct a book that is 300-odd pages long. All right,
a coherent book.
And his second book was actually Patronage, Personalities and Parties. He published that in 2010. And this book covers issues to do with patronage, female enfranchisement, Cayman and the British West Indian Federation, a whole lot of things that society needs to document and know about. His third book, A Gathering of Old Men, was published in 2012. And this book has stories such as the death of Artemisia Johnson, how Pearl lost her false teeth, incident at Old Crawl, and so on. Right? So here he's mostly going into the arts, in short story writing, that kind of thing. His fourth book, From Guardhouse to Glass House. I particularly like this one because he allowed himself to be vulnerable in a sense. He speaks about his own family background and what he went through growing up in Cayman, familial issues and so on and so forth. And then he brings us into an understanding of what it required of him to have started where he did start from and to become what he has become. All right? So it's a personal story, I think, but it's also a story that is worth telling. All right? And as Henry pointed out, he has a new book coming out entitled From the Vestry to the Premier, The Evolution of Modern Caymanian Politics. And he also had a book of poetry coming through. So from our perspective, we don't have anybody else who has written as much about Cayman. Okay? in some other societies, what they do is to have, when there's a body of work that is there, we have an occasion that celebrates it, and people are invited to come and use those works as points of departure to write their own paper. All right? And this is what we want to do. It's actually June 24 that we're going to have this symposium, and we're here to talk about the public scholarship, but also to invite the listeners to participate. It's going to be a free event to the public. It will be held at the Hartwell Theatre, as Mr. Matu has brought us into it. And we're inviting persons to consider, sending us abstracts that you want to do a paper. I'm going to go through the areas that person can actually write on.
Yeah, yes. And I appreciate it. And as we all now welcome Equal to by Dr. Monica Lawrence. Good afternoon to you, Mom. Thanks so much. People don't realize the demands on the schedule of our educators. So thanks for joining your colleagues this afternoon.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
As we were just chatting, the notion that society, especially one like Cayman, that a previous guest was sharing, we traversed the world like many. We had interactions. A small space, a small place with a growing population. It's not just embracing all that is here, but it's also reflecting, recording, and sharing that with others. I think Mr. Borden has been, not just generous with his time, but I think he has answered a public calling. It's important for us, right, Dr. Lawrence?
Oh, definitely.
If I could then maybe ask Dr. Williams, from your perspective, we see Mr. Borden, who isn't just a prolific author, but a public champion. With your perspective from the thesis to the lecturing now, and that call to students to take interest, to be constructive commenters, but also be, objective evaluators of what has transpired. As we look at the call for papers, the deadline isn't that long. What are you asking of people from that perspective? And I'll come back to Dr. Smith on it. But they want to present.
Right. So, Cayman is small, but it's not really that small in terms of knowledge base.
Small but mighty.
We are multicultural. At last count, 135 nationalities represented here, if not over that. Right. So Cayman is, it's definitely a massive global player, right? And so in many ways, Cayman is quite relevant, right, in every possible sense. The historical sense, the psychological sense. When you think psychological, what does it mean to be Caymanian? That's a vexing one, isn't it?
For whom?
for people like me and others.
Why?
Because it's such a big and unwieldy label, right? But it does come with its, let's say, with its vicissitudes. It does come with, okay, I am Caymanian, or do they see me as Caymanian?
But do you see yourself as such?
Yes, I do actually.
Okay.
I do.
It's interesting.
But the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is that because of the let's say, the dynamism inherent in multiculturalism, right, you're going to have these competing visions of Caymanianness, or, these competing visions of legitimacy. Who belongs here really? You know what I mean?
I take a different view from you,
okay.
Dr. Smith.
That's all right.
Because there's the American, the Jamaican, the Trinidadian question, what is, to be that, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at Jamaica is not like Cayman in that multicultural sense, right? So, yes, touched by globalization, but, you can go to Jamaica, you touch down, and you see that Jamaican identity every and anywhere. Because we are so open to multiculturalism, for some, it becomes sort of difficult, especially those who consider themselves natives and legitimately Caymanian, and to have other people like me, or I don't know who.
But it's not. Are you contradicting yourself? Because if a country is so open as you say, Jamaica is to multiculturalism, yet it's very prominent that what is evidently Jamaican is obviously present when you arrive. Cayman, that has 1,000 different nationalities, right? You see the multiculturalism. You see perhaps the challenge by many Caymanians as well as the recent visitor being able to identify, well, what is food, what is the practice, what is the song, what is the thing. So maybe it is not that being open to multiculturalism makes you predominantly who you are. Is the reverse.
Well, the thing is that we're open to it, but it's also here. You see what I mean? So we're open to it, and it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And so when you consider that, the fact that it's everywhere, and you have people here from different cultures, different nationalities represented, they don't just leave their nationalities or cultures at the door. And then for the simple fact that after a while they begin to see themselves as legitimate residents, of course they're going to bring those ideas to bear. And so, this symposium, I think it's a very wonderful opportunity for us to sort of get the different ideas, right, and let's say ideological contexts that are out there.
Okay.
Well, and I could segue into talking more about the symposium. Dwayne, public scholarship does require all of this.
Rigor.
It requires a level of disquiet, and interrogation needs that. Okay, and it does need a space to, of course, for persons to know that the intellectual freedom.
Yes,
that's very important. If you don't have that, you cannot have the kind of public scholarship that we're talking about right now.
Right.
Okay, so again, wonderful listeners, the date for the symposium is June 24. It will be at the Hartwell Theatre. And the objectives are: we want to honor the scholarship of the island's main public intellectual. We want to bring together thinkers to write critically about issues which are the subject of Mr. Bond's text. We want to encourage scholarship centered on the Cayman Islands. We want to encourage young local university students and graduates to submit papers. And we want to have a substantial publication after the event. Now, Mr. Budden's 7 or so books now cover a range of topics, including the nature of small island societies, the founding of the Cayman Society, Cayman literature, Cayman political culture, ethics, the evolution of the economy, political corruption, the political party system, colonization, leadership, family systems, education, among many other related topics. So I cannot think of anything that a person might want to present which is not covered at some point in the book.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of a public intellectual. That person doesn't have the luxury to just think in one way. You have to think broadly. You have to be able to bring together a multiplicity of things to make sense of it. All right,
yes,
but I think is what he's doing here.
Right. Well, we do have a caller online. If we would, be so gracious to join our callers. We have Dr. Smith, Dr. Lawrence, Dr. Williams as our guests. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for sharing. Hey, good afternoon.
Hello?
Hi, how are you today?
I'm fine, but I don't talk too much and I'm burning out my credit. And I got 2 issues I need to address.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 1, I'm frustrated because somebody done start with their nasty, dirty behavior, destroying candidate billboards, which I think is very low, whoever is doing it, because like I tell them on
that's
for the
probably,
record this morning, everybody have their choice to run, and whoever want to vote for whoever, that's their business. Right. And then when they go in wrong campaigning, they should not be going wrong telling lies on another candidate to get people vote. Make people feel out or study out or whatever who they want to vote for best or whatever, because that's how someone, and I know that's a fact because that's what happened last year, but one person only beat somebody by a few votes because they went wrong telling lies about the person because people that they told stuff tell us back. Then yesterday morning I was going out after 5 and one billboard right almost close by me had the people up on it. And then I went back down the road later on the day to go with my friend. We were going to drop her daughter to the college like 12:05. And when we coming back up, the piece of plywood was there and the picture gone blank. Somebody had take between after 5 in 12, whatever.
Right.
They tore down the thing.
With those with those issues, or are those things that you probably would refer to the police for destruction of property? Now, you said there were two issues, the billboard one. What's the other?
Well, they should put them under the jail, and I am watching in the better man got cameras up there now.
Right.
And they will get catch.
Okay.
And they're going to be prosecuted.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for that. And this is, as you said, how it's, but maybe it's a maturing part of it. All right, thanks for that. Let's try the other caller as we're talking about the upcoming symposium for Mr. Borden's works. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm just glad that the topic today don't cause you to go off the cliff too.
Well, I thought your contribution this morning was excellent as usual.
And leave us alone. Leave it right there.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So.
No. Just saying that you got calm people in the studio, and you're not driving off the cliff. I think I can take a nap now. I can take an afternoon nap.
There you go. It'll all be better on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you, bye.
Bless you. Hey, sometimes you smile at what you know, you laugh at what you glow. Dr. Williams, Dr. Smith, Dr. Lawrence. I think this is where we can see what's reflected in our society sometimes increasingly. We may get to a point where we can critique either through, a publication, or we may see it exhibited through a sculpture, for instance, or we read a piece of poetry, and it's not just the prose that sort of, fascinates us. It's what's not being said as we read between the lines, huh?
The inferences.
Yeah. Also, too, I'd like to interject that for the symposium, I think it would be wonderful if we could have some of the high school teachers, because Mr. Borden is one of the few writers that have really spanned a wide section of our society, in that he writes storytelling. And I would love to have maybe some of the high school teachers to talk about his work and how it is that they can use it in their classroom to teach the culture, Cayman culture, among the youngsters. Because, as I said before, storytelling is a part of our, everybody's history, more or less. But it teaches ethics, values, cultural norms, differences, and especially in a society, as Dr. Williams pointed out, where we have so many different nationalities. I think part of the reason why some of them do dominate the Cayman culture is because they're more knowledgeable about their culture. So
that unification is what we need, huh?
Definitely.
Yeah,
so, and the teacher should really use those storybooks, as a way of
tools,
incorporating the history to the younger.
Grow respect for you, and you can share with others so much easier. We do have, I believe, another caller. Let's see if it's still a topic. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for sharing.
Good afternoon to you, Sterling Green.
Afternoon, sir. Afternoon.
Good afternoon to your very intellectual and knowledgeable panel here.
Yes, sir.
I would name everybody would take your time up on. It's wonderful that you're doing this to honor Dr. Borden, more or less, so to speak. I just tuned in, so the symposium will be doing other things, but I know he's easily the most prolific of the Caymanian writers. We have a sort of dearth of that here. Because most of our history has been oral, it's been handed down type of thing. As seafaring people, we sort of concentrated a lot, I believe, on that aspect of it so much that it's just the seamen with their logs. And my father's a captain, so forth, and down the line it's the sea, and the building boats and everything. I'm so proud of all that. I can't begin to say how important that was to us. My older brothers, a lot men coming home took care of us. He's 10 years older. I lost a sweet son, a wonderful brother. So I know the importance of that. But then we forgot to write things down, a lot of it, My mother wrote down a lot of our family history and things like that, and I do rely on that my job as a tour guide to try to teach people our history, and even school children and teachers too. But then again, we made a foreigner write our history for us, and we could have done that ourselves. And I'm glad for Dr. Creighton's book and so forth with it up on the seas. And as the lady just said, with the storytelling, we just lost one of the great stalwarts there, as we know,
yes, sir.
from Bordentown there. But other countries, particularly Jamaica, they have a lot of well-done books from a long time ago by Jamaicans. And, given their history, they said, they know their culture and they know, but the heritage, if you want to split the difference and call it our heritage, many of us as generational Caymanians would know things, and then we thought it wouldn't be important to tell if you say 138 different cultures here, which is very, I don't know where else as small as we are that has that many different cultures exist in our different nationalities, and it has become a problem. It's no use anybody saying that it's not. It is to generational Caymanians. But be that as it may, some are assimilating, some are not, and this is a very different Cayman we're living in the last 40 years. Very, very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do believe we have to get more into trying to make an annotated part of it, and rather just this oral thing with us. Over the years, we have to get used to trying to get things noted down and in a real historical way, or put it forward in books and so forth. And just with the politics, I'll show you something real quickly as we're talking about the politics as we knew it. And I remember when I don't know if you know Mr. Jimmy Forbes. You might have known him as Mr. Luke Forbes, well known. His son is a well-known pastor and all that. Dale. But I remember Mr. Jimmy looking on me one time in town. I think it was the 76 elections. And he said to me, Mick, now remember, you got to vote for Jim, when elections are up. Just trying to show you how things went. And I said, but Mr. Jimmy, I moved away from Savannah a long time ago, and I'm living in West Bay. He said, oh yes, he told me West Bay. He said, oh yes, then remember to vote for whoever Jim tells you to vote for in West Bay. This was it with a very popular person. I'm just trying to show you how things went, and when people said that we're going to vote on the issues this one concerning, it's the issues really that aren't that important, and it might still go that way. They are important, but not more or less it's personalities, and I'm afraid that's going to continue for quite a while, and that happens in other Caribbean islands too. I'm sure Dr. Smith and the others can tell you that. It has been a personality thing. Doesn't matter how brainy or wise a person is academically or otherwise, because that's not all the education, what you learn in university, as we all know. But you find that continues, and we'll secretly do that and say, oh, we didn't do that, I voted on the issues. But I'm just saying that it's a kind of thing with us that we're looking at that person, the charisma and the this and that, and we vote because the old man voted for them and grandfather voted this way and that so forth. Have a wonderful day. I listen on.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend as well. And respectfully, let's just pause, take the news headlines. When we come back, we invite you for a few more minutes of your time as we talk about the symposium. Stay tuned.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
February sees a spike in local burglaries. Of the 8 burglaries, just under half were at commercial businesses. Jodianne Powery with the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service says it's important for folks to be reminded there are things they can do to ensure they are less likely to become victims of crime. She said on the most basic level, locks and good lighting are essential, as it is also a great tool for preventing and investigating burglaries. For tips to keep your home or businesses safe, head to rcips.ky. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. More than 300 schoolgirls have been kidnapped by unidentified gunmen from a school in Nigeria's northwestern Zamfara state, police say. Security officers have been dispatched to the town of Jangabi, where the girls were seized early this morning. Local officials have confirmed the attack, but have not given more details. This is the latest mass abduction targeting schools in recent weeks. Armed gangs often seize school children for ransom. And the Duke of Sussex has said he had to step back from royal duties to protect himself and his family from the toxic situation created by the UK press. Prince Harry told TV chat show host James Corden it was destroying his mental health, and he did what any husband or father would do. Buckingham Palace confirmed last week that the prince and his wife Meghan would not resume royal duties. The Duke insisted they were stepping back rather than stepping down. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
It's time to update your information. If you've recently changed your mailing address, phone number, or email address, please let your Water Authority customer service team know. Visit our website, www.waterauthority.ky, to download and fill out our customer information update form, or contact our customer service team at info@waterauthority.ky or call 949-2837.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you aware of the performance of your pension plan? The Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan provides quarterly fund fact sheets for our members to stay informed with the plan's performance. For the year ended August 31st, various life cycle funds provided returns between 9.2% and 16.5%, and our all-in expense ratio is currently the lowest it's ever been, a record low at 0.72%. Visit chamberpension.ky to review our fund fact sheets. You can see the performance as far back as 10 years. Remember that pensions are a longer-term investment strategy. Focus on the long term rather than the short-term returns. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan continues to perform for you.
April 14th, 2021 is Election Day in the Cayman Islands.
Running for political office is no easy feat. You need to be everywhere, all of the time.
Now is the time to get your important messages out to the voting public.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands, has always been there for incumbents and future candidates alike. Whether you want to get your political commercials or infomercials on air, make in-house studio appearances, or have your district meetings broadcast live to the listening audience.
Set a time today to meet with one of our knowledgeable Radio Cayman sales account executives who have their fingers on the pulse of the community.
Call them today on 949-7799 or email rcsales@gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, we've been in the community for just about 45 years. That means something.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for your time. And we've got a few more minutes. I'm very, very grateful that they're so gracious with their time to invite the listeners to not only be aware of an upcoming symposium for the works of J.A. Roy Borden as a public intellectual, as we've been interrogating the Caymanian Society and the call for the papers. Well, I got Dr. Smith to tell us a bit, but he reminds me the abstracts are due the end of April, which isn't long from now. The full papers are due by the 11th of June.
Right.
And
Henry has the call for papers on the website of CNCF.
Right.
And but I just want to alert everybody who really wants to be part of this. It's absolutely free to the public. Anybody can come, and the symposium will be June 24. But we're asking you to think about doing a paper. It can be a panel, it can be a joint paper on something that is covered in the. And I've just outlined a range of ideas really that you can cover.
It can also even be a poster presentation.
It can be a poster presentation or something like that. And so we're asking for the topics. So, just call me, Livingston, at 916-6462. Call Henry at 926-3652, or just go to the website of CNCF and get the details and the emails and all of that. Dwayne, just want to emphasize how important it is what somebody like Mr. Bodden has done. All right? Recording the history, but also projecting into the future, interrogating things is very, very important. All right? And so we want to stimulate more of that. We want to honor that scholarship and encourage other persons to write also. Because what I would say is that the more the voices, the more interesting the record. All right? Now, Mr. Bodden was always very big into the arts, and he has dabbled into poetry and short story. And Dr. Monica is really, an expert in that area. I'm sure she'd want to comment on that.
Oh, definitely. I think I found him, Mr. Bodden, to be truly an artist. Although the thing about it is that when you read his stories, you can easily visualize a pantomime. You visualize music, dance, everything as a part of a cultural presentation to his works. And I have worked on several of his plays in that regard. So one of the things that I would encourage the schools to do is to use his books, which the students they can easily relate to it, because these are stories, everyday stories. But it also teaches them the history, and they can act it out. They can embellish it and do other things to it, and in that way it is entertaining. You see, one of the things it's not a problem, but one of the things in Cayman is that the theater is not really looked upon as an avenue to teach, right? And it is. Believe me, in some societies, it is. And they are very successful at it. So I would encourage schools, instead of importing all these foreign plays and these Shakespearean things and, all these other writers from Europe, and you're talking about, when at Christmas time you're thinking about snow and sleigh bell and all that. Come right back to the Caribbean and teach them to respect their own. Let them understand what it is that makes them who they are. And unless we do that, we will not progress. We have to start with giving them the respect of what it is that makes them Caymanian, what is their history. And we can do it in a very entertaining way. Mr. Bodden understood that. As I said before, I've never seen any intellectual that has written from storybook to, the history of a country. There's nobody else that has done that. It's remarkable.
Not long ago, Rita Stevanovic and, forgive me now when I see him next to the gym. The fellow they did this series during Christmas a couple of years ago across the districts, and speaking to the Caymanian stories and the way they presented it can be, as you said, educational and entertaining.
But take the stories further. Yeah. This is not just storytelling. When you sit and you tell these kids the story, let them act it out. Let them make up the songs that go with it. Take it a step further. Don't just stop at the story. Go deeper into the history of it. What song can we interject here? Put it to dialogue. Put it to movement. You know what I mean? So instead of us telling the kids about, okay, there were crocodiles and turtles, how do they depict that? And in that way, what you're doing is that you're developing their creative imagination. And any nation that don't have that, believe me, is stagnant. You have to start it from the young. So,
Well, I hopefully will get it.
And Dwayne, I know our time is going so fast. Thanks, Monica. Just to go through again the areas that people can write on, and I'm going to mention an area called epistemology, which has to do with how does one go about deciding what is actually acceptable as knowledge. And I'm interested in that because Mr. Bond was really one person writing this thing, right? For example, his book, From Guardhouse to Glass House, this is his take on things. To what extent should we give, how much merit should we give to that? So we're not just, we are interrogating his works, you see, and that's very important. It's not just celebrating, but interrogation. And a person can write on different topics, for example, history, politics, culture, economy and political economy, education, literature, the role of the public intellectual, ethics, leadership, epistemology, all of those areas a person can write on, using this book as a point of departure, all right? And we really want this symposium to be a point for good discussion and a way of advancing, scholarship, commanding scholarship, definitely.
Well, as you said, the sort of deadline for the extracts are April the 30th, and then the full papers are not due until the 11th of June, but the symposium is on the 24th of June.
Precisely. Just send to us your interest, so we know that you really want to do something. So at least we have that down. So, okay, this person going to write something, and the topic you want to do, and we can take it from there. We don't want to make it, too difficult either. We want people to be a part of that and to also attend.
Well, that's
and by the way, persons from abroad will also attend. Mr. Panton.
Dr. Panton?
Dr. Panton.
Dr. Neil Panton?
Right, Neil Panton. He's part of the planning committee. He wanted me to make sure I say that because he likes the idea. And he might even himself be doing something.
Okay. Well, hopefully he'll be one that we consider bringing as well as the chap from England. But anyway, again, back to the disrespect for the people, right? I appreciate it, man. We'll see where it rolls. We'll see where it goes. Dr. Smith, always a pleasure. Dr. Williams, the banter with you is always engaging, man. And of course, the lady of presence, Dr. Monica. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy it. Monday's a holiday.
Monday?
It is?
No.
Wow, and Dwayne, we have other members of the committee who want to come later on. I think
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Steve and people like that.
We will have this on again as you need. Yes, it's important. All right, let's pause and take a short break. A few minutes of open line when we return. So stay tuned.
Why work with a Suriba agent? We can tell you that those letters represent a proven understanding of the real estate market in the Cayman Islands. But it also means so much more than that. Our trained Suriba agents are committed to ethics, integrity, and excellence of practice. It's all about confidence knowing you are working with a qualified Suriba agent. As members of Suriba, your trust is our promise. To find a Suriba agent today or to search thousands of listings, visit Suriba.com. Suriba, the mark of excellence in real estate.
Thinking of getting a hybrid but don't know much about them? Vant Motors has lots of great reasons why you should choose a Toyota Corolla Hybrid or CHR Hybrid for your new ride. Hybrids save fuel, run cleaner, reduce CO2 emissions, and even recharge their batteries while being driven, so you don't ever have to worry about plugging them in. Both are super quiet as well as economical and fun to drive. So stop by Vant Motors to check out a new, fuel-efficient, eco-friendly Toyota Corolla Hybrid for only $26,900 or a sporty CHR Hybrid starting from $34,150 while stock lasts. Go Toyota. Go hybrid. Go to Vant Motors on Walkers Road.
Speak up at the polls this general election, April 14th, 2021.
Do the right thing. Exercise your democratic right and vote. A public service announcement from your number one community station, Radio Cayman.
You still run rings around your kids or grandkids. You can show the young people a thing or two. You wouldn't say you're old just yet. You may not think you're vulnerable to COVID-19, but you are. High-risk individuals with COVID can get long-term damage, including lung damage, brain fog, and loss of smell. In some cases, they may die. People age over 60 are strongly encouraged to get vaccinated for yourself, your family, and the community to keep yourself healthy and feeling young. For information on how priority individuals can get vaccinated, visit hsa.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us as we wrap it up for the Friday afternoon. We got some open line. We're glad and gracious to go to the phones. Hey, good afternoon and thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ebanks.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Well, I'm glad I got a little better reception than I did this morning.
Oh, well.
I tried to call in this morning when Mr. Connor was on the air about the Shamrock Road.
Oh, okay.
But I was told that on my location I had to pay for the call. I've been calling the show from Tanva Lichtenstein was on there, and about 2 weeks ago, and today was the first time I've been refused a call.
Sorry, can you maybe not for public, but maybe let me ask. I mean, why is that? You picked up the phone, dialed the regular number, and was that when it was answered on our end, or was that the recording that you received while you were dialing it?
I don't know which one it was, but that's what I received. I told them my location. They couldn't. I would have to pay for the call.
Yeah, that's dialing.
I've been in this location for over 50 years.
Yeah, that's when you dialed the 1-800 number, I presume.
That's right. And I was on this radio from time while
Yes, sir.
Was there. So
right. And did it, if I may just ask one, did it say sorry, toll-free calls from this location are not free or something like that? That's the recording you got, or the voice that you got that was saying words to that effect?
It was something like that.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
For my location.
Yeah, interesting, huh? All right, well, I appreciate you sharing that with us publicly, and I believe it was the communication from dialing the number, not the answering on our end, but I will ask and refer that up the chain. So apologies for that, for what it's worth, huh?
Okay, because I'd just like to say I was one of the first persons that between cable and wireless when myself and Booth Thurston signed up, but they didn't even have an office. We signed up right in front of the town clock out there. The gentleman had a clipboard.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was the first. This second time I was refused to call, and because I'd been a customer from a long time ago. But I wanted, because what I wanted to call about it was that Shamrock Road.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I heard. Yeah.
I guess it's over 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, that I wrote a little book about that name, Shamrock Road. That was built by the late Tom Jackson, everybody from Newlands.
Mm-hmm.
And those days, that was the equipment that he had was a shovel, a crowbar, pickaxe, wheelbarrow. That's all he had to work with. That was Cliff Rock. He built that road. That's one of the best roads.
Mm-hmm.
But the original road went out on Iron Shore nearly.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Crichton House, I think that's still up there. That is back to the road that was built, because that was facing the sea, the whole road when it was there. And I'm sick of recommending and suggesting that road should be Tom Jackson. It was a sports new road when it was in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Change it to Shamrock. Since they had to change it, the name of it, why didn't they honor that man from Newlands, Tom Jackson, who did a wonderful job in building that road?
And from all that I've ever heard, as you just referenced, the tools that he had, but that road was built with such precision. It was so properly aligned. I mean, I'm told it's probably, not just given this timing, but it's probably still the best piece of road in terms of, construction, engineering, design. He was definitely a very talented man.
That's right. The equipment, because that was Cliff Rock, and they had to break that. That's got the foundation. But he got the best foundation, and the road came on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have been. In fact, I wrote a little article, a little book some years ago in 2012, and mentioned that in him. And I've been at many politicians and everybody. I've been on this radio many times.
Right.
About naming that road.
Yeah. Captain Paul, if we could ask you, and forgive us for asking it publicly, but this morning, Mr. O.C. had shared that, it would appear that Mr. Tom was a sea captain as well. Would you know if that is the case, just offhand?
No, I don't know about him being his brother or the sea captain, William Jackson, Jackson. But I don't know. Well, he was a ship owner, and he was also a bootlegger.
Well,
because that big house up there in Newlands, that was built many years ago, and that's still standing. And he was an outstanding man. He was,
yes, sir,
in his community. And I said what he worked for then, he was a genius on that work.
Yeah, and this is where I think, even just reflecting briefly on the conversation prior with our guest earlier, this is where we're not doing the type of job that we can and should be doing relative to showing respect and appreciation for our people, celebrating their accomplishments, but holding them up as examples, not just, for what was accomplished then, but what can be accomplished now, because we can look to our own. There's a growing maybe call to appreciate that, but there's certainly an alarming, display of disrespect still. So I don't know what it's going to take, huh?
Yeah, one more thing I want to mention.
Yes,
I was at that celebration yesterday evening. It was very wonderful, but nobody didn't mention or seem to know that at that location, that's where the late Ms. the one that wrote the national anthem.
Ms. Lita Ross.
Yeah. That was her house spot.
Yes, sir.
She was there. She was. I don't suppose there was many people around that remember that. But that's where she was. That's where I remember her, right there in that place.
Well, that's kind of how I heard when the building that was first there. That was her sort of family home, I guess, in a sense.
That's right.
That's
where I know from.
And that's what I heard. I mean, I never knew it to be inaccurate. But again, what is it going to take for not just Caymanians, but for us as a public mantra? Be okay with showing respect and celebration, appreciation for who we are. It'll extend to. Anyway, it's a political season. Maybe we'll get a lot of answers this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Thank you so much for taking the call. Have a good evening.
You too, sir. And we'll see what we can do. But I've had that happen to me before as well, placing that call into the 800 number. So not quite sure what it is, but I will ask. And thank you for sharing. But thanks, for everything else as well, sir.
Okay.
God bless. All right, a few minutes left in the program, and you want to call and maybe contribute, go right ahead. It certainly is an opportune time to share, and maybe we need to indeed be those people who are prepared to stand and be counted. And if this is our home, this is where we sort of have intentions in a way to maybe lay in our heads at night. Maybe it's where we lay our everlasting remains, or if it's just where we're making, our bread and butter for the day. Well, let's see if we can find a way to work together to make it better, safer, healthier, more stable, more enjoyable, peaceful. And as we go about our daily lives, maybe finding a way to improve the lot of others as we endeavor to improve our own. Now, if there's a thought, a comment, a question, a query, or even a complaint, although I would honestly invite us to try to find more positivity. It's challenging sometimes not to associate yourself with those who are, less than positive, perhaps, put it that way. Not that things don't come our way that cause trials, tribulations, and challenges, but how do we respond to them? And are we able to draw alongside others to help to share the load? Are they willing to shore us up in order for us to, make it just another step further? But even in our own psyche, is it our disposition to be positive, to pensively reflect and be introspective, as it were, to improve who we are? Now, you can read all sorts of things and subscribe to different mantras, and maybe it may, get your chakras in order. But at the end of the day, if you're not about, making a positive, meaningful, profound contribution, and it's just about, what do they say, looking out for the only person that matters to you, and that's the person that reflects, without critiquing that image in the mirror to ensure that what you project is in fact what is real, well, you're only kidding yourself. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. We certainly want you to come back on Monday and be a part of the Story Show for the record. Join us for Talk Today right after the midday news and midday meditation. But there's a lot that can transpire between now and the weekend, including a red sky at night. As you go and enjoy it, how do you evaluate what is there? How do you look, and as you have a sort of discerning palate, make a very constructive critique of what unfolds. And perhaps it may be an engagement for a future sort of endeavor. It may be just one of those things that leads to even much more as time unfolds. All right, have a wonderful weekend. And I like my country, but chances are they won't be playing in it this afternoon. But also into R&B, a little bit of soul, anything good that soothes the spirit. Until Monday, my friends, be blessed.